Have you ever had that feeling that there's a full-on battle happening inside your own head? One part of you knows exactly what you're supposed to be doing, while the other part would rather do, well, literally anything else. Today, we're diving straight into that war. Okay, let's just get right into it with a scene that I'm pretty sure we've all lived through. You've got a huge deadline breathing down your neck, a big report, a really important email you have to send, maybe studying for a final, and then out of nowhere, you are hit with this overwhelming, undeniable urge to organize your entire bookshelf by color, or maybe clean the grout in your shower. What is going on there? Here's the thing that's so fascinating. We've been calling this the wrong thing for years. We say we're lazy or that we're bad at managing our time, but neuroscience tells us something completely different. This isn't a problem with your calendar, it's a problem with regulating your emotions. And honestly, getting that one little shift in perspective, well, it changes everything. So to really get a handle on this emotional battle, we need to meet the two opponents who are fighting for control of your brain. I want you to picture a tug of war happening right between your ears. On one end of the rope, you've got this wild, impulsive beast, and on the other, a calm, thinking human. First up is your limbic system. This is the ancient, really powerful part of your brain. Just think of it like a toddler or a beast. It runs on pure instinct, it wants pleasure right now, and it wants to avoid pain at all costs. Its entire philosophy is, I want to feel good right now. Its opponent is the prefrontal cortex. Now, this is the new kid on the block, speaking in brain terms. It's the adult in the room. It handles logic, planning, and thinking about what's going to happen later. So, when you're staring down a task that feels even a tiny bit unpleasant, who do you think wins that tug of war? Yeah, it's the limbic system. It basically throws a massive tantrum, screaming about how awful this task feels, and it hijacks your brain. The logical prefrontal cortex, which is quietly saying, hey, we should probably do the work, just gets completely steamrolled by that primal need for instant relief. So why is the limbic system freaking out so much in the first place? What is this pain that it's so desperate to get away from? The answer, well, it gets right to the heart of the whole problem. And here is the absolute key to all of this. Procrastination is not a character flaw. Let me say that again. It is not a character flaw. It's a defense mechanism. It's your brain's, admittedly clumsy, strategy for shielding you from the negative feelings it has connected to a certain task. You're not avoiding the work. You're avoiding the feeling of the work. And what are those feelings? Well, it could be anything. It could be simple boredom, or it could be this deep anxiety about whether you can even do it right. Maybe you feel insecure about how it'll turn out, or you just plain resent having to do it. And of course, the big one, that paralyzing fear of failure. Your brain flags all these feelings as a threat and just goes, nope, let's go watch a cat video. That feels way better. Okay, but if our logical brain knows this is going to end badly, why do we keep kicking the can down the road for our future self to deal with? Well, it turns out there's a pretty wild and honestly slightly disturbing biological reason for this. This is just mind-blowing. When scientists put people in brain scanners, they found that thinking about your future self lights up the exact same parts of the brain as thinking about a total stranger. Your brain literally treats future you like it's somebody else's problem. You don't have a strong emotional connection, so piling a bunch of work on them doesn't really feel like you're doing it to yourself. This whole thing perfectly illustrates a principle called temporal discounting. It's basically a built-in bias in our brain that makes a tiny reward right now, like the relief you get from scrolling social media, feel way more valuable than a huge reward later, like the pride of finishing a project. It's not a weakness, it's just a feature of how we're wired. All right, so we've got an emotional toddler brain fighting for instant gratification and a weird cognitive bias that makes us treat our future selves like strangers. How on earth do we fight back against that? Simple. We don't. We trick the system. This is called the 5-minute rule, and it is just beautiful in its simplicity. You pick that one thing you're avoiding. Then you make a deal with yourself. You are only going to work on it for 5 minutes. That's the whole deal. I mean, come on, anybody can do something for just 5 minutes, right? So why is this little trick so ridiculously effective? It's because it lowers the bar so much that the limbic system doesn't even see it as a threat. A 5-minute task doesn't set off the pain alarm bells. The toddler in your brain doesn't throw a tantrum because the commitment is just too small for it to even care about. You sneak right past all its defenses. And then, once you've actually started, something kind of magical happens. A psychological principle called the Zeigarnik effect kicks in. You see, our brains are wired to really hate unfinished business.
Once you've opened that little loop by working for just 5 minutes, your brain starts creating its own internal push to keep going and close the loop. Getting started is literally the hardest part of the entire process.
Okay, the 5-minute rule is an amazing tool for getting started right now. But what about the long run? How do we stop this cycle of procrastinating, then feeling guilty, and then procrastinating even more because we feel so guilty? The answer is completely counterintuitive. Our first instinct after we procrastinate is to just beat ourselves up, right? Ugh, I'm so lazy, I have zero self-control. But what does that actually do? It just piles on more negative emotions, stress, shame, guilt, onto that task. And what does our limbic system do when it feels negative emotions? It looks for relief by, you guessed it, procrastinating more. It's a vicious, self-fulfilling cycle. But check this out. The research shows that the exact opposite approach is what actually works. There were studies that found students who just forgave themselves for procrastinating on one exam actually studied more and procrastinated less for the next one. So here's the bottom line, the thing to really remember. Guilt is the fuel for procrastination. Forgiveness is the brake. Just accepting that your brain is wired this way and forgiving yourself when you fall into the trap, that removes the stress. And when you remove the stress, it becomes so much easier to get started next time. So listen, you're not lazy, you're not broken. You are a human with a human brain that is hardwired to avoid feeling bad. But now you know how it works. You have the tools to trick that brain into action, and you have the mindset to break the guilt cycle for good. So the only real question left is, what task are you going to give just 5 minutes to starting right now?